So the resin's set in a few hours, but I've left it overnight to really let that resin, the water resin, the clear resin, set really hard. And so it's got a nice effect around his feet and around the stones. What I've also done is I've trimmed off the edges where it was mounted against the sides. And I did that because the effect, there's a kind of an effect when you pour the resin, it kind of sticks to the side. So just trimmed off those with a scalpel, sand them down a little bit. They look a bit rough and ready at the moment, but the next stage for me is just to apply the water ripples. So I'm going to go and show you how we're going to do that now.
As you can see, I've finished all the detail of the rocks. I've got the kind of foliage now in there, put some detail as you saw from grass flocking and various kind of materials. And what I'm doing now is I'm just putting an edge around, which is going to be my border for when I pour the resin. Hopefully it'll be lower at this end. Don't know if you can see there, so kind of it's lower at this end and slopes up to the back here. So my plan is to make sure that I've got enough seal around the front and the edges, but just in case. So what I've done is I've just got some masking tape and I am sealing some plastic card underneath, just in position here. A little bit awkward trying to do this there. Actually, let me lift it up a bit and show you what I'm doing. So I'm just sealing that at the bottom, and then just get a bit more tape around here. And you want to make sure that you've got a tight seal, so you don't want any resin coming out underneath there. And there. I'm also going to put a tiny bit of glue down here as well. That should seal that nicely so that when I pour the resin in, it will kind of go nice and flat. I'm just doing that to glue the plastic card together. So I've just got a smooth edge, seal that together there. Let that dry. And then the next stage is obviously to put the figure in and to pour the resin. Now I've got my figure here. This is a Bandai's 1/12 Stormtrooper, and I have just assembled him, but he's in position at the moment. He's just been dry fitted there, so I've just been playing around with kind of positions and poses for him. What I'm probably going to do is obviously the feet are going to be embedded in the resin, so that will mean that he's going to be very, very fixed. But the upper arms and everything will be able to kind of be moved. So what I am thinking is just to try and position him in a way, because remember the water and everything is going to be down this end. So I want to position him in a way that is going to work. Originally I wanted this foot to be slightly raised as well, as though he was stepping into the water like that. So currently I'm thinking that I want him with the big rifle. He's got 3 weapons in the kit, just a standard blaster, slightly longer blaster you can see here in his holster, on this rifle, and I'm thinking I'll use the sniper rifle. Now I can't get him to sit. There we are. And what you want to do is you want to be able to kind of position your figure in a way that gives the most dramatic pose. The great thing about this kit is it has several hand options, so you can either have the gun in the left hand or the right hand. You can have the holster on the right or the left. And likewise, you can, I think he's got a hand that points as well. I think this left hand is pointing. So you've got him in a different way. The arms and everything move. So obviously you can position him in any way. The stomach and torso twist and the head moves. So it's a really nice kit. What I'm not done is I haven't sealed this. I haven't glued it down. So the only thing that will be fixed is the feet. And so I can pop him off if necessary and just move him around or put the new arms on. So the next job is to mix up the resin and pour that into the base when that is fixed. Right, welcome back everyone, and I am now ready to start pouring the resin. As you can see here, I've already mounted the figure to the base. I've just used a bit of super glue to kind of stick his feet to the floor, really. I mean, I just need him in position. You can use pegs, you can use other methods, but I find that a little dab of super glue is going to be fine. I've got the sides, I've sealed around here so that none of the resin will leak. Fingers crossed on that one. As you can see, I haven't really sealed it with anything else, so I can kind of sand that down afterwards if needed. And we're only going to be pouring the resin in this area here and flattening that out, so we don't want it too much. I've got a couple of colors. I've got some standard blue food coloring, or I've got crystal light blue by MIG, which is an acrylic. Now some epoxies don't always work well with acrylics, so I've got some standard food coloring. You can use various inks as well, and I've got the epoxy resin, which I've already pre-poured into 2 containers, A and B here, roughly 30 milliliters each. This one is by weight. This standard kind of art resin is by weight, and it will take quite a while to dry. So what I've done is I've made sure that I've weighed those using a decent set of scales. If you are going to be pouring resin, even in minimal amounts, get yourself a really good kind of set of scales, digital scales, so you can weigh those out. And you know, do keep your materials and surfaces clean, because the resin can go everywhere. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of the blue food coloring in with the part B. You shouldn't really mix it in with the part A, because this one's the thicker mixture. Part A is the runnier. And there will get bubbles in here, but I'm not too worried about that because this is a water effect. So, you know, water has bubbles in, and I'm going to be putting surface details in and things. If you're going to be doing anything in, you know, that's a solid piece with clear resin, then I would suggest, you know, kind of using a vacuum or kind of equipment that will get rid of those bubbles. But for me, what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to mix in a tiny drop of the blue. 1 drop first. I'm not going to waste it because it can color quite quickly. So as you can see, that has really mixed a deep blue already. And that was from 1 tiny little drop. So there. And I'm mixing it thoroughly in. You can see lots of bubbles in there, unfortunately, but the clear resin usually dries without very many. Right, let's put a lid back on that. Get that out of the way. Now this does take time to cure. Doesn't require any UV lamps or anything like that. Will take you know, quite a few hours to fully set, so you've got a long lead time in order to kind of mix and work with this. The resin for the base that I use to pour the resin for this, takes 3 minutes and it's cured. So generates a lot of heat in the silicone mold, whereas this will take quite a few hours to dry. So the surface is prepared. I'm going to just position it so I can pour it into this corner, and it hopefully will then settle, and I'm really worried about it pouring out, so hang on a sec. Don't want to ruin my cutting mat, so I'm just going to use a piece of paper towel underneath. Probably won't help very much, but there we are. Now actually this figure, once it's fully posable and moves, as I say, so what I'm going to actually do is, once, to help it settle, I'll probably pop the body off, but for now I'm just going to mix these two together. So pouring the A to the B. I'll throw these cups away afterwards, so I just got a quick job lot of cups online. You want to try and get as much out as possible. Oops. See, that's why you use some paper towel. Right, put that aside. Now you want to give it a good stir. Unfortunately, as you see, there's lots and lots and lots of bubbles in that, and that's gone a very nice blue colour. If I wanted to make that greener, I'd use some green food colouring or add a tiny bit of yellow. And in fact, I will actually mix some yellow in there. Mix a tiny bit of yellow to give it a bit of greenery. You can see there, I don't know, tiny bit in there. And that's mixing in now. And there's still a brightness in there. I want to just dull that down. See, the blue food colouring is a lot brighter. There we are, it's got a bit greener. As you say, you get time to work with this resin, but you want to mix it in. I can still see. Mix all the colours together. And also mix the A and the B. I'm using just a standard wooden stick. You can use any other material, but again, okay. I'm actually going to pour it this way. Here we are, pour it in here. And I'm using the stick to help guide over some of the rocks. As you can see, it's going over his foot. As you say, this is about 60 mil, 60, yes, of resin. Actually, that's probably more than I need. Appear to have a leak. Tiny bit more out here. It's pooling at the back there. Let's just move that out of the way. The resin's going a little bit, you can feel the heat. So it's starting to cure. Okay. Now that's going to have to be left to dry. The next stage, as I say, I've got some resin left over, but I don't want to use it too much actually because I'm quite happy with the way it's poured. And then there's going to be another layer on top, which is going to be the surface detail, where the foam of the flowing river will go around his boots and around the rocks. So I wanted to leave that. Obviously, I'm not too worried about the bubbles on the top. Normally, you can get rid of those with a blowtorch if you're careful, just a little mini torch or lighter. But actually, it doesn't matter too much on this. So I'm just going to make sure that this is all, there we are, around those rocks. There. We'll leave that and let it cure. And what I've done is I've actually taken off the figure, sat him on my side. That's the great thing about these Bandai kits, is you can take them off. It's going to give me a more kind of flexibility around playing with his feet. So what I've done is I've done that. I'm going to be using the NOCH water effect. You can buy this from any online retailer, and I've pre-poured a little bit out. It's because sometimes the top itself, when you trim the top, it can go everywhere if you're putting it on a model, so I prefer to use a little bit in a pot. I've got a couple of applicators, got an old brush that's gone stiff and horrible, so I'm going to use that, and I've got a kind of a very fine kind of toothpick type applicator and an old wooden stick. So what I'm going to first do is start to add. So I'm going to get a little bit of this, and then what I want to do is apply this in ripples around the objects. So what I'm going to do is just apply this liberally first, because I want to go for different effects. And this is why I mentioned, where I've sanded this on the outside. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to be doing lots of detail around the outside of these as well. So I can get rid of this roughness on here where I've sanded. And sometimes you'll probably need a couple of layers of this because when it dries a little bit smaller. There we are. Let me take that off there. You can immediately see that it's already giving some ripple effects, and this will dry clear. Dry clear. So even though it's going on white, I want some detail around here. Bit at the back there. So you want to apply it where you feel As you say, you can build up a couple of layers on this. So there. I'll just put that to one side. And I'm going to get some of the finer ones and I'm going to double this around. And then once this is dry, I will then add another layer. What we try and aim for here is some detail on ripples. Let's just move that around, take a little bit over here. How about that? Rock. And this is just to take the evenness of the surface off, because obviously water wouldn't be totally even. We've got some bubbles in the resin, but it's not really going to matter. So there we are. I'm going to let that dry. And then once that's dry, as I mentioned, it's pretty warm at the moment, so actually it might dry quite fast. There are various brands on the market. As I mentioned, I'm using this NOCH water effect, but you can get that from any reasonable retailer. So if you need to shop around. A lot of detail around this boot here actually. So there we are. I'm going to let all of that dry. Clean these off, clean the brushes. Actually, there's a little bit at the back there, just behind this rock. Okay, and we'll come back to that when it's dry, and I'll show you how that's applied. Now this has taken about 20 minutes to dry. Surprisingly, as I mentioned, the heat at the moment is making it dry well. So you can see already we've got these nice little ripple effects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some more of my NOCH material and I'm going to finish up adding additional detail around here, dabbing it on. And just generally finishing off. We've got a couple of big lumps where I want to just highlight ripples around his shoe, where he's just first stepped into the water. So think about, I mentioned before, the position, or if you figure how that would look in the water. What I'm doing now is I'm showing where some of these water would flow. Get that on there. I may have to do a few layers, but that's okay. I mean, the stuff is quite quick in the way it sets. I'm going to put a bit around this foot there. And then the last thing I'm going to be doing after I've applied all these ripple textures is there's another kind of water effect which will just add a tiny bit of foam detailing to the water, and it just gives a little bit of white highlights. Just put that on there, get that on there. Being a bit frugal with what I've got in here, whether, as I mentioned, it comes out the bottle quite a lot. So I'm gonna, so again, gonna let that dry. Oops. And come back to that in a minute when it's and dry, and we'll do another layer. So I've left it about 40 minutes maybe, and everything now has gone very, very hard, and the resin and this NOCH material, NOCH, has set really well. So what I am going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of Vallejo water texture. This is a really kind of interesting product. It gives that foam effect on the top. There's some other brands out there, but I prefer the Vallejo version. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a tiny bit in a palette. Put that there, you can't really see too much. And I'm going to a tiny amount on a brush. Now tiny dab effects, can't really see because you get a lot of light on this. You can see that I'm just starting to apply a tiny amount of this material. And I'll apply it to the tops of the water. There. So can't see that too well. It's not picking it up, unfortunately, on the camera too well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just apply some of this in various areas and around some of these rocks, just to give it that foam effect. And I'm using, as I say, I'm using a tiny amount on the brush because really it's quite a messy if you applied it thickly, so not quite dry brushing, but certainly going to apply this not as liberally as I applied the other material. Let's see. So I want to get a little amount on here and dab it just to give that foam ripple effect around their feet. So let's really show you there. Let's try and get it a little sharper. Right. So I'm going to come back to that and I'll show you how I do it in a few minutes.